Good afternoon, everyone. This is Larry Schellink, and it is Sunday, December 29th, and it is 2 p.m. in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I am delighted to be back with you again today after our Christmas holiday. I'm hoping all of you had a memorable holiday and have peaceful and enjoyed time with friends and family as we did. Today I want to talk to you about something that I think it's timely as we look at the end of the year. Actually, we're looking at the end of not only a year, but at the end of a decade. And we are right on the eve of 2020, which certainly has a lot of indications that many of us would think that 2020 would be a significant time, as it references the idea of perfect vision. And I'm hoping that that is what we are going to bring forth, you and I, and as many as possible, that we can bring forth a new vision for our lives, for how we are, how we show up, and where we draw our inspiration, where we draw our guidance, that it comes from the highest and best in us, which of course is what we consider to be our true self, our Christ self, our Buddha nature, the essence of us. We have certainly found out what happens when we come from those parts of us that are needy, that are greedy, that are not connected with the truth of our abundance, when we are bereft of a sense of well-being. And when we act from that place, we know it doesn't go well. And we usually do something that is harmful to others or to ourselves. And our world is certainly demonstrates how that plays out on a global way. And of course, in our own lives, we have our own stories and our own regrets and ways that we have not been listening deeply to the voice and to the guidance, to the wisdom, and to the love of who we are. That's sort of what I want to go to today. I want to be a little bit more self-effacing, perhaps, than I normally am in these kind of messages to you, because something hit me quite hard, maybe a couple of weeks ago, and then kind of amped up over the holidays when I had more time to contemplate what was going on for me. And before I get into that sort of shameless self-revealing aspects of my own journey, I just want to set this up a little bit with the premise that seems to go without saying, but really we forget, don't we? So let's go a little bit into this idea of what does it mean to be spiritually awake, or how is it that we can approach our spiritual life in a way that is actually aligned with the truth, as opposed to sometimes the stories that you and I make up about spirituality, which is connected oftentimes to our limited sense of how it is. So I wrote this morning when I was just sort of jotting down some notes, and here's what I said. That the infinite does not need a boost to help you wake up. It is enough to simply hold to the timeless truths and allow spirit to take its rightful place in conscious awareness. This is not an add-on like putting on a garment, which is the surface mind, the dualistic mind, the way it thinks. We'd think from the mind's perspective, if I don't have something, then it's something that's still apart from me. It's out there, and I have to go get it. But in spiritual terms, and in the spiritual process of waking up, it's a sensitizing process where I become available and accessible to this presence, while at the same time noticing what else is vying for attention, and where I am giving my identity over to what is false and separating me from my true being. Rumi said it like this. He said, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. So, if you are like me and like many people, you have been on this path a long time. And perhaps you've been confounded by a seeming lack of success, that you feel that despite all of your spiritual practices and all of your sincerity and how you have sought to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and all of the prayer and meditation that you've done, and the study that you have done of the spiritual texts and learning from the spiritual masters, and you have listened and to really try to discern really what is it, and how can I get to this place of liberation, of freedom, of peace and well-being. And it just seems to elude you over and over and over again, and you always feel like you've just somehow fallen short, that you're still in a state of lack or limitation, that there's still this unfulfilled part of you, that this part of you that's still feeling that haven't arrived, and you're still plagued by doubts, and you're plagued by emotions and thoughts that are unpleasant and that feel anything but spiritual. I don't know if you can relate to this, but this is typically what many people, if they're being honest, will say about their spiritual life, their spiritual journey. That as much as it kind of feels good to be in the milieu of the spiritual practices and the study, it feels as if there still has been some falling short, something that has not quite clicked, and it makes the mind just wonders, what is that? What am I not doing, or what am I doing wrong, or what haven't I learned, or well, what teacher or teaching have I not encountered, that if I were to finally meet this great teacher or have this download, this powerful enlightening insight, that I would finally cross the finish line and I would be done. And I would say to you that this is all mind chatter. This has nothing to do with the truth, or how one finds the truth and awakens to spiritual reality. All of that is just the way the mind likes to look at everything as a problem, and looks at everything as any goal is something other than what's at hand, and sometime other than this moment, and somewhere apart from this place where I am. That is rooted in this notion that you and I have a sense that we are separate beings, that we are separate from each other, we're separate from whatever we consider our higher power. We use our five senses to that sort of validates this sense that there's space between objects, and we look across the arc of time, and we can look back and say when we had something and now we don't have it, or when we didn't have something and now we do, and we associate everything on this space-time continuum, and we do the same thing with the spiritual realization that we're seeking. And we would say that, right here and right now, I don't have it. This liberation, this freedom, this peace of mind, this wholeness, this love, that I don't have that. And if I don't have it, that means that I have to go get it. And how am I going to get there? And we look at it as a journey, a journey of time and space, and the time and the space are not this moment, and they're not where we are. So I hope that makes sense to you. I hope that it's helpful to you to realize that feeling that you and I have, that we haven't arrived, that we are still apart from this spiritual realization. I hope you can hear that that's how the mind works, and it does not reflect the truth. And the reason we know that, if we're listening even to the teachings of Jesus, he was very clear about saying, you know, do not look for the kingdom of God, here and there. For the kingdom of God is within you. It's at hand. And there's nothing more clear than that, is that the instruction is to call off the search for this realization that's apart from you here and now, and to bring the attention, always bring the attention when we are seeking to know who we are, to always bring the attention inwardly in this present moment. If we have any hope of waking up, it's not going to be when our attention is apart from this moment or apart from where we are. It is a here and now experience, reality, and it can only be realized here and now. And this is said time again by many traditions, and the Advaita tradition, which comes from the Hindu tradition, that basically says there's only one reality. And of course, in unity, that's the same message. There's one presence, one power in the universe, God the good omnipotent. And this notion of oneness, precludes the idea that there could be any reality apart from the one reality, including us. If there's only one thing going on, if there's only one reality, then we must be a part of that reality. If we were not a part of that reality, then reality would be dualistic. It would have a multiplicity and a diversity of reality. And all of that multiplicity and diversity that you and I experience in life, it all comes because we identify through this mind and through this body, which is programmed to perceive differences and to perceive spatial and temporal differences and distinctions. And when we apply that form of looking at life to our spiritual life, then we make a fatal error, and it's the error that keeps us stuck in not experiencing this spiritual truth of our being. It has us in constant seeking but not finding, and it is the definition and the prescription for endless frustration. So I wanted to lay that out, and I've got a little funny joke here. It's more of a humorous Zen story, and it's about this Zen student who was, like I was just talking about, he's out searching for enlightenment, and he's going from guru to guru, from master to master, just not quite finding what he needed. So he left the teaching, and he went to another teaching and started studying Christianity and then Buddhism, and he just kind of went the whole gamut. And maybe some of us can relate to being on a search for the 31 flavors of spiritual awakening. And so he went to more workshops and retreats, went to different healers, and finally, feeling exhausted, he goes to this mountaintop where he's heard that it's this very high energy vortex in this ancient place. And he makes the long climb to the top. And he's exhausted, but he finally makes it to this pinnacle. And he cries out, "Oh, mighty God, I have listened and stayed open to your teachings. Please fill me with your light. Fill me with your wisdom. Fill me with your joy." And there's a short pause, and then the voice of God says, "Oh, precious child, I am constantly filling you, but you're leaking." You're leaking. And that's really what pretty much sums it up, is that we're leaking. We are leaking this energy that we are seeking all of the time. We are made in the image and likeness of love and peace and joy and wholeness. That's all that we truly are. But we invest our attention, we put our faith in all of these temporal changing circumstances of life, and hope to find peace and well-being in the circumstances of life without regard for the idea that we'll never find them there. That what we're really looking for is where we're looking from. It is the pure awareness of our own being. That is the fulfillment. That is the source of all that we want and that we are seeking through people and circumstances and situations. So it kind of brings us back up to, sometimes people hear this and they go, well, that doesn't help me because I'm trying to figure out how to live more peacefully in this life. And it sort of arrests people's thinking process because, we're so used to looking outside and trying to figure out what's the formula for a good life and a successful life. And when we hear this, that it's already here at hand, many people, do one of several things, but the one that more often is they just don't believe it. They just can't believe that everything that I'm seeking has already been given. And when they hear things like, God can't do any more for you that God did as you were created in its image and likeness. Because again, when we go back to this idea of looking out and looking for the evidence of love and the evidence of peace and the evidence of joy in the circumstances of our life. And this, again, is fallacious thinking. It's rooted in our tendency to look outside of ourselves for what is already here and now. And so I want to tell you a little bit more about my experience and what's happened to me in the last few weeks. So really what it comes down to is that I have been professing these teachings for many years, not just for my own sake, but obviously as a spiritual teacher. I've been proclaiming the truth that I just shared with you these last 20 minutes or so to hundreds and thousands of people. And I have said over and over again that what we're looking for is within me. And that anything that we look for in the world or anything that we look for in another person is only a false idol. It's only a false god. And if we worship that false god, we will find ourselves missing the gold, missing the true reward of staying home, staying present, staying present to the awareness of the being that underlies everything in life. The source of all manifestation is primary, and it's that we must seek, and we must realize in order to have this feeling of well-being. And so, here's my disclosure to you is that I have been a rather lax practitioner of these teachings, and it's come up for me lately when I have not really been showing up as a spiritual teacher with the frequency that I was doing when I was engaged as a minister, where I was sort of constantly distracting myself from this radical honesty that I've realized recently, because I was always before people and counseling with people and speaking and giving messages and counseling with staff, and so I was always in the mode of showing other people the way to spiritual realization and to peace and to the experience of love. And by doing that, that was a form of distracting from whether and how I was actually doing that for myself. But of late, since I semi-retired and I've had more time on my hands, um, I have had the ability and I had the time and the space to really reflect on, how am I doing with these teachings? How am I being honest with the proclamation? And how am I acting in integrity with these assertions that the Spirit is within me and has everything that I want and need? And I haven't done that well at all. I've been very lax in spiritual practice in terms of meditation, in terms of gratitude, which I find to be extremely powerful way of bringing ourselves back to the awareness of all that is good and all that is right and all that is complete and all that is already present in our life, and sort of getting a little bit of gnashing of teeth and being sort of complaining about life, and then in other areas not really meditating. Um, uh, is with a kind of regularity that I easily could do with my current schedule, and sort of really drifting away from everything that I have held to be true and have told people that they must do in order for them to realize this peace and to know this truth as an embodied experience. And so I've been having to, live into that awareness and to be radically honest. And then as I began to do that, I realized I had some other habits that had also been going on for some time. And that had to do with alcohol. And not in an alcoholic drinking way, but having a glass of wine or two on a daily basis. And and then realizing what's that about and why do I need to do that? Um, and so just asking some questions of, doing things mindlessly, doing things, um, begs the question, what is motivating that behavior? And so that led me to go down memory lane, and the drinking, it was something that I grew up with. I came from a family with two alcoholic parents, and it usually happened right around dinner time that things started getting crazy. And that had to do with the parents that were starting to imbibe alcohol and changing their personalities, and they got, kind of unsafe emotionally to be in that space. And so growing up right around dinner time, I became anxious. And so what I'm realizing that every night, right around dinner time, in the 5 to 6 time frame, I get anxious, and then that's when I want some alcohol. That's when I want a beer or a glass of wine or maybe two. And so I thought, well, isn't this interesting? And isn't this something that really needs to be looked at? That what I have been saying all along, that the source of my comfort and the source of my peace is within me. And I have just substituted a substance to numb my feelings of anxiety instead of going to the source, you know, being present to what I'm feeling, and then allowing the the presence and the love of my own being to nourish me and to nurture me and to soothe me. And so, this is my sort of shameless self-disclosure that this is something that I'm letting go of. And I intend to be more conscious in all areas of my life. Because whenever we put anything, we put our faith in anything for the kind of comfort that I'm talking about, and that is inner peace and love and well-being, then we are creating a false God. And when we create a false God, not only do we miss the benefit of the real source that could really provide a profound and deep sense of well-being, but we also are investing faith in something that will constantly need to be refreshed, constantly need to be refilled, and will only provide temporary and fleeting results. So I offer this to you not just to tell on myself and try to make a point of that, but to ask you, if is there something in your life that you have put your faith in that is continuing to sort of operate, maybe unconsciously, that is your way of dealing with anxiety or discomfort in a way that you realize is moving you away from your attention being on the source of your well-being and the source of your peace. Because, again, as we began in the beginning, um, you know, the presence and the power and the love of God need nothing from you in order for them to be fully manifested in your being. But on the other hand, your experience of the presence and the power and the love of Spirit has a lot to do with your posture, with your receptivity, your openness. How accessible are you? And if you're raising all kinds of barriers to the awareness of this presence, which we do, and we can sometimes just do that with a story, the story that we have that, I could feel the peace of God if it wasn't for this person or this situation, or if I had more money, if I had more time, if, whatever it is, the mind is, uh, the mind is actually um, made more real and is strengthened by these stories of separation, that we are separate from our good, and is constantly then in search and in seeking of some situation, circumstance, person that will take away this discomfort, and we can become addicted, and I say that in a loosely, to any number of situations and habits and ways of being that keep us from having this realization of the deep peace and the love and the sense of well-being. So I just wanted to offer that to you today. I think it's really important for me. I'm always excited. When I feel this sense of excitement, I know that I've struck a vein of gold. It's something more true than what I knew yesterday. And it isn't like this is something like earth-shattering, because, if anyone were to observe my life, they probably would have noticed it. But I think what I had done with it is I just rationalized, because I wasn't drinking alcoholically, and I come from a family where I know what that looks like. But it was, with the glass of wine or the 2 glasses of wine and the regularity of that, and looking forward to it at the end of the day, for this self-soothing, for this numbing, was really, it now became a red flag for me. And I'm just not interested in living a life where I'm investing my well-being or in some substance. And I'm certainly opposed to the notion that using a substance as a substitute for the presence and power and love of Spirit is just a completely unacceptable um, way of being and way of acting in the world. So, so that's it. I think that what I'm saying here is what Meister Eckhart said, that God is not attained by a process of addition to anything, but by a process of subtraction. So the question really before us is, and a worthy question every day, is what is standing in the way of my peace? What is standing in the way of a feeling of love? What is standing in the way of a sense of wholeness? What is standing in the way of feeling free, liberated? What is standing in the way of possibilities for my life? And as we answer that question, we may very well find out um, a particular key that could unlock our spiritual progress and move us uh, really in league with uh, the ones that are candidates, truly candidates for spiritual inspiration. Because no longer is there anything that has taken the place of that inspiration, of that true inspiration. And then You are this open vessel. You are this willing, open vessel that Spirit might have its way through you and me. And that is the glorious experience of grace. And it's not earned. You don't have to do anything to earn it. All you have to do is figure out, what have you made more important than that openness and that willingness? What have you um, whenever you say, I need this to be happy, you've just made one more barrier to the awareness of God's presence, Spirit's presence, love's presence, the presence of joy and well-being. And if we can end this year and begin the new year with this as a spiritual intention, that I'm going to be rigorously honest and shamelessly self-aware of those times when I have put something or someone ahead of this spiritual intention, and that I'm willing to let go of any story that would obstruct or delay the awareness of the presence and the power and the love of Spirit. Because when we do that, we will find enormous progress. I'm already feeling more light just from a few days of this realization and living into it. And you can be as honest as you want to be with your own inner higher self. You can come to Spirit with those things which you might be ashamed of, or those things which you have sincere and profound regret. There is no judgment. There's no judging. There's no labeling. You are not diminished by such revelations or admissions or coming clean. You are only lightened. You are only enlarged, and your heart is much more made more receptive and has greater capacity to embody this truth. So that's my sharing with you as we come to the end of this year. I pray that you have the willingness and the courage to take on this rather formidable challenge. And I know that you do, because that's who you truly are, and that you will find the ways forward to make this end of the year and the beginning of a new decade something that will liberate you, that will bring you greater sense of love and peace and joy. And that is your and my divine birthright. And whatever we need to do to make that real for us, we're up to the task. And when we do that, we will have extraordinary possibilities unfold for us in this life, beyond what we have ever experienced before. This is the promise. The kingdom of God has already been given, as Jesus, our master teacher, said. So let's live into that promise. Let's realize more of the kingdom that is the embodiment of truth, of love, of peace, of wholeness, of freedom. Let's be living examples of how spirituality can transform us from the inside out. I bless each of you. I send you my love and my good wishes for the new year, and I plan to be with you again next Sunday. Namaste.